Understanding Malhama al-Kubra, a prophetic overview. The concept of Malhama al-Kubra, often translated as the Great War or the Final Battle, holds a significant place in Islamic eschatology. Described in various hadiths and prophetic traditions, it is anticipated as the bloodiest and most decisive conflict to take place before the Day of Judgment. While many associate it with the term Armageddon in Christian belief, its foundations, context, and spiritual depth are distinct. Within Islamic teachings, the term Malhama stems from the root word implying intense slaughter and carnage, and Kubra signifies greatness, thus giving it a powerful connotation of a massive war destined to reshape human history. This is not an ordinary war, fought merely for political or territorial gain, but a divinely foretold confrontation that will separate truth from falsehood on a global scale. Among the narrations attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, several references describe this war taking place in the region of Al-Sham, modern-day Syria. Its importance in hadith literature is underscored by consistent references to its scale and impact. However, these narrations are layered with symbolism and ambiguity, requiring reflection and deep understanding. The war is said to be fought between the Muslims and the Romans, which scholars and commentators over the centuries have interpreted as a reference to Western or European forces. Others suggest it may symbolize a broader alliance of global powers opposing the true cause of Islam. The use of such general terms hints at the ongoing relevance of these prophecies, allowing for unfolding fulfillment as the world changes. In the light of deeper interpretation, this event is not merely a political war, but a divine event in which the final purification of the earth will begin. According to several narrations, before the rise of the deceiver known as Dajjal, the earth will be engulfed in widespread oppression and injustice. It is during this atmosphere of confusion and tyranny that the awaited one, the divinely appointed leader from the lineage of the Prophet, will rise. His emergence is not coincidental or politically motivated, but divinely decreed. He will not seek power through force or diplomacy, but will be recognized by a select few, whose loyalty and awareness stem from their inner clarity and spiritual insight. This leader, often described as a descendant of the Prophet through Fatima and the imams of his household, will lead the believers into Malhama al-Kubra, not for conquest, but for the restoration of divine justice. It is essential to understand that in this battle, numbers and weapons are not the only deciding factors. The strength of faith, divine support, and spiritual alignment with truth will determine the outcome. The narrations suggest a fierce battle that lasts for days, with casualties so immense that the earth itself mourns. Some narrations describe the battlefield being so littered with martyrs that birds flying overhead would fall from the sky due to the stench and intensity. Yet within this brutal environment, the hearts of the true believers remain unshaken. They are not fueled by hatred or vengeance, but by love for the truth and a longing for the appearance of divine order. This is what differentiates Malhama al-Kubra from all previous wars. It is a test of spiritual loyalty, not just martial skill. What makes this prophecy even more unique is the nature of preparation involved. Unlike worldly wars, where preparation involves strategies, alliances, and armament, this war requires preparation of the soul. It demands that the believers develop certainty in the unseen, uphold patience in the face of oppression, and stay connected to the divine guidance of the rightful leaders. The victory in Malhama al-Kubra is promised not to those who hold worldly power, but to those who carry the legacy of divine resistance and have remained steadfast upon the straight path, even when it meant isolation and hardship. Throughout centuries, Muslim scholars have attempted to interpret the narrations surrounding this great war. While the exact time and place remain hidden, the signs leading to it are becoming increasingly visible. The spread of injustice, the rise of false leaders, the growing detachment from spiritual values, and the persecution of those who hold firm to divine guidance all indicate that the world is moving steadily toward the events foretold. In context, Malhama al-Kubra becomes more than a prophecy. It becomes a warning, a call to spiritual vigilance, and a promise of divine justice that will be established through sacrifice, blood, and unwavering loyalty to the truth. Among the Imams of the Ahl-e-Bait, there is a clear indication that the final conflict will not be merely physical, but deeply spiritual in essence. This is why many traditions emphasize the purification of the self, the development of spiritual vision, and alignment with the divine will as prerequisites for those who will stand firm in the Malhama. The elite companions of the awaited leader are described as people of night prayers, deep insight, and firm resolve. They are not merely warriors, they are torchbearers of divine light in a world filled with darkness. Their strength lies not just in their swords, but in their hearts, that know no fear except of Allah. This inner transformation is the ultimate preparation that will enable them to endure the horrors of the Great War while keeping their sight fixed on the promised dawn. Moreover, this battle is not to be understood as a random outburst of violence, but as the climax of a long historical resistance. The struggle of the oppressed against tyrants has continued through generations, from Karbala to every stand made by those who chose to side with the truth despite overwhelming odds. Malhama al-Kubra is the final expression of that same resistance, where those who inherit the spirit of Hussain rise once again to confront the forces of falsehood. This continuity of resistance is essential to understanding the battle's sacred dimension, linking the past sacrifices of the pure ones to the ultimate victory of justice. As the world increasingly moves toward instability, with rising oppression and moral decay, the relevance of the Malhama narrative becomes clearer. It speaks not just to the future, but to the present condition of humanity. It is a mirror reflecting our distance from divine values and a reminder that the path to salvation lies in returning to sincerity, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to the truth. In the shadow of materialism, the Malhama invites reflection upon what truly matters. Not comfort or power, but the eternal struggle between right and wrong, and our role within it. In sum, understanding Malhama al-Kubra demands a lens that sees beyond headlines and politics. It requires the insight to perceive divine patterns unfolding in human history, and the courage to align oneself with the forces of truth, even when they appear small or marginalized. The Malhama is not only a prophecy of a final battle, but a call to every soul that yearns for justice and awaits the fulfillment of a divine promise carried through the blood of the righteous and the prayers of the oppressed. The timeline of the end times. Where does Malhama fit? The events leading up to Malhama al-Kubra unfold within a carefully structured eschatological timeline that Islamic traditions have preserved through authentic narrations and the teachings of the Ahl-e-Bait. These events are not isolated phenomena, but interconnected signs that prepare the world for the final divine confrontation. Malhama al-Kubra does not occur randomly. It emerges after a build-up of trials, spiritual decay, social injustice, and geopolitical chaos. Understanding where this great battle fits within the timeline of the end times allows us to see it not only as a physical event, but as a divine marker along a path that humanity is destined to walk. The first major phase includes the minor signs, Ashrata Sugra, which consist of moral decline, increased dishonesty, widespread injustice, abandonment of religious practices, and the domination of corrupt rulers. Many of these signs are already manifest in today's world, religious scholars being sidelined, wealth becoming a measure of worth, and rulers being chosen not for their piety but for their power, are signs that the moral fabric of society has been compromised. Among the most striking elements is the gradual normalization of oppression and the silencing of voices that call for justice, paving the way for global tyranny to take root. Once the world has become engulfed in this widespread corruption, the stage is set for the appearance of the Sufyani, a tyrannical figure from the lineage of Abu Sufyan. According to narrations from the Ahl-e-Bait, the Sufyani rises in the Levant, Sham, and wages war against the followers of truth. His reign is marked by brutality, deception, and a campaign of terror against the believers. This is one of the pivotal signs of the imminent appearance of the divinely guided leader from the household of the Prophet, who rises not from wealth or power, but from occultation, a state of divine concealment that ends when the time is ripe. Before the actual outbreak of Malhama al-Kubra, other key events unfold that build spiritual and geopolitical momentum. Among these is the celestial cry, a heavenly announcement heard by all in their own language, declaring the reappearance of the awaited leader. This cry serves as a final spiritual awakening for those whose hearts are still receptive to divine truth. But immediately following it comes the satanic countercry from Iblis, sowing confusion and leading astray those who have not trained their souls to distinguish between light and darkness. The timeline continues with the uprising of the pure and courageous soul known as Al-Yamani, whose call is in perfect alignment with the divine cause. His role is crucial as he gathers and purifies the ranks of the believers, guiding them toward the awaited Savior. He is not a rival to the Mahdi, but a loyal servant of the same divine mission. The same cannot be said of the Khorasani and other figures who rise with their own agendas. It is only those who maintain alignment with divine guidance, regardless of geography or lineage, who contribute to the formation of the righteous army. Then comes the most awaited event, the emergence of the Mahdi. His appearance marks the beginning of a new chapter in history, one that reshapes spiritual and political structures entirely. He is recognized by a select group of 313 companions, similar in number and purity to the soldiers of Badr, each prepared by divine will and gathered from across the globe. Their allegiance is not to a personality, but to the divine mission he carries. These companions form the nucleus of the force that will ultimately engage in Malhama al-Kubra. This allegiance occurs in Mecca, near the Kaaba, signaling the beginning of the public mission. With the rise of the Mahdi, the balance of power begins to shift. Corrupt regimes feel threatened, alliances break, and new geopolitical equations begin to form. As the Mahdi moves toward Kufa and establishes his base of operations, a campaign of reform begins, aimed at restoring the divine order. But it is not without opposition. The forces of corruption and disbelief coalesce into a global coalition that cannot tolerate the rise of a power that does not submit to materialism or compromise its principles. It is at this point that the events accelerate toward Malhama al-Kubra. This great war is not just a consequence of the Mahdi's appearance, but a reaction to it. The leaders of falsehood recognize that their dominance is in danger, and thus they provoke a war to destroy this divine movement. But divine wisdom allows this confrontation as it becomes the ultimate battlefield where truth and falsehood clash in their clearest form. The Malhama thus becomes the filter through which the loyal are separated from the hypocrites, and the path to the final divine intervention is cleared. The narrations indicate that during this time, the world will witness a polarization never seen before. Neutrality will vanish, and every individual will be forced to choose between allegiance to divine justice or to worldly oppression. It is a period where true faith is tested, and only those with unwavering belief will endure. The Mahdi's army, despite being outnumbered, is spiritually fortified, and the presence of angelic support is subtly hinted at in various traditions. Their strength lies in the purity of their intention and their submission to divine command. As Malhama al-Kubra unfolds, it is accompanied by extraordinary events. The Hadith literature describes a battle so intense that swords break, blood flows in rivers, and even the earth trembles in grief. Yet amidst this chaos, the Mahdi remains composed, leading with divine insight and unshakable resolve. His leadership is not based on charisma or politics, but on truth that resonates with the soul. Even enemies, upon encountering him, find their hearts shaken by the light he carries. One cannot ignore the importance of the timing of the appearance of Dajjal in this context. The narrations align closely in suggesting that the emergence of Dajjal follows soon after Malhama al-Kubra, indicating that this war creates the spiritual conditions necessary for the final test. Those who survive the battle and remain loyal become the followers of truth in the most difficult phase of human history. The world by this time will have been reshaped by divine intervention, preparing it for the arrival of Isa ibn Maryam, peace be upon him, who descends to assist in the final stage of purification and justice. In the understanding of the Ahl-e-Bait, the timeline is not merely a set of events, but a spiritual journey. Each stage purifies, separates, and elevates those who are destined to stand with the truth. The lead-up to Malhama al-Kubra is not just a geopolitical build-up, but a transformation of human hearts, an awakening of dormant spirits, and a global call to choose one side before the veil of illusion is lifted entirely. When examining this timeline, it becomes clear that humanity is not left without guidance. The narrations serve not only as prophecies, but as blueprints for preparation. Those who reflect upon them internalize their meaning and align their actions accordingly, are already walking the path of the righteous. The Malhama does not come as a surprise to them, for they have long awaited the moment when the battle between truth and falsehood will be laid bare before all. Thus, Malhama al-Kubra is not a beginning nor an end, but a middle point in a divinely orchestrated journey. It fits within a timeline that stretches from the fall of moral order to the rise of divine justice. And in this timeline, each believer is called not to spectate, but to prepare, align, and act with the awareness that the final war before the end is not just a battle of armies, but a war of souls. The battlefield, location, armies, and alliances as the timeline of divine prophecy unfolds, and the world prepares for the long-awaited confrontation. The focus shifts to the actual setting of Malhama al-Kubra, the battlefield, the forces involved, and the alliances formed in anticipation of the final war. The location, though often symbolically described in Hadith literature, has traditionally been understood to center around the region of Al-Sham, encompassing modern-day Syria, parts of Jordan, Lebanon, and Palestine. This land, rich with prophetic history and deeply associated with the trials of the end times, becomes the ground upon which the destinies of nations will pivot. The narrations point toward a city or region known as Dabiq or Amak in Syria, where the confrontation between the army of truth and the army of falsehood will erupt. This battlefield is not arbitrarily chosen. Historically, Al-Sham has witnessed some of the most significant events in Islamic history, from the early expansions to the battles of resistance against crusaders and tyrants. It is a region sanctified by the footsteps of prophets, and its soil carries the memory of martyrs and divine intervention. The choice of Syria as the stage of this great war signifies that it remains a spiritual center, destined to play a critical role in the unfolding divine plan. The armies involved in Malhama al-Kubra are described in multiple narrations. On one side stands the army of the righteous, led by the divinely appointed leader from the lineage of the prophet, a man known not merely for his military strategy, but for his embodiment of divine justice and wisdom. His followers are not a conventional army assembled through political treaties or promises of power. They are chosen souls, gathered through divine command, unified not by ethnicity or language, but by their unwavering commitment to the cause of truth. These individuals come from all corners of the earth, having recognized the divine signs and responded to the call with sincerity and loyalty. This righteous army is said to be composed of 313 companions at its core, symbolically aligned with the companions of Prophet Muhammad at Badr. These individuals are described as deeply spiritual, fearless, and possessing an insight that transcends worldly perception. They are not ordinary soldiers. They are servants of divine will, each selected for his readiness, purity, and endurance. Surrounding this core group are broader supporters who join over time, expanding the army into a formidable force of resistance. The opposing side is traditionally referred to in narrations as the Romans. Scholars have long debated this term, and while in the classical context it referred to the Byzantine Empire, many interpret it today as symbolizing the modern Western powers or a coalition of global secular forces that stand in opposition to divine guidance. The term may also extend to include corrupt regimes within the Muslim world, governments and leaders who have abandoned justice and become agents of global oppression. These forces are not only numerous, but well-equipped, holding political, military, and economic influence over much of the world. The alliance that opposes the army of truth is characterized by its diversity of motives. While outwardly united, the elements that make up this alliance have conflicting agendas. Some are driven by material interests, others by fear of losing power, and still others by ideological enmity toward the principles of divine justice. Despite this internal disunity, they form a massive army with the intent to crush the emerging movement led by the Mahdi. Their unity, while impressive in number and force, lacks the spiritual coherence and divine blessing that sustains the army of the righteous. It is within this context that the Malhama al-Kubra unfolds. The battle begins with intensity, and the battlefield becomes a place of unimaginable violence. According to various hadiths, the fighting will last for several days, with casualties so vast that the terrain will be covered in bodies. Some traditions speak of a battle so fierce that a man from one tribe will be counted as the only survivor. Horses, though symbolic, are said to be soaked in blood up to their knees. The devastation is not only physical, but spiritual, as the true nature of every participant is revealed through the crucible of war. In the midst of this chaos, the Mahdi maintains unshakable resolve. He is not only a military leader, but a spiritual guide, his presence serving as a source of strength for his companions. His decisions are based not on strategy alone, but on divine inspiration, making him unpredictable to the enemy, but deeply trusted by his followers. His leadership is marked by humility, wisdom, and complete reliance on divine support. Under his command, the army of truth exhibits extraordinary courage, patience, and resilience, facing overwhelming odds without faltering. One remarkable aspect of this confrontation is the absence of reliance on advanced weaponry by the army of the Mahdi. While the opposing forces are well equipped with modern technology, the righteous army depends on divine aid, unity, and sincerity. This disparity highlights a recurring theme in sacred history. Victory is not determined by material strength alone, but by the alignment with divine will. Just as David defeated Goliath and Hussain stood firm in Karbala against an empire, the army of truth in Malhama al-Kubra draws its power from an unseen source. The role of women in this battle, while less frequently discussed, is not insignificant. From the perspective of the teachings of the Ahl-e-Bait, women play a crucial part in supporting the cause, not necessarily as frontline fighters, but as protectors of the message, caretakers of the wounded, and moral compasses in times of despair. Their sacrifices mirror the legacy of figures like Sayyida Zainab, who upheld the truth in the face of tyranny, and they contribute to the spiritual dimension of the battle with their patience, prayers, and unwavering resolve. Alliances during this time are fluid, and betrayal is a common theme. Several narrations indicate that some individuals and groups initially aligned with the Mahdi may abandon the cause due to fear or the lure of worldly gain. This filtering process serves to purify the ranks, ensuring that only the most sincere remain. Loyalty is tested not just in speech, but in action, particularly when the battle enters its most brutal phases. Those who remain are not just allies of the Mahdi. They are participants in a covenant that stretches back to the earliest defenders of divine truth. Interestingly, the Mahdi's army is also joined by a group from the east, often described in narrations as carrying black flags. These individuals are believed to come from the region of Khorasan and symbolize a people prepared for sacrifice. They are not led by political ambition, but by a longing for justice and closeness to divine mercy. Their arrival reinforces the divine nature of the movement as they fulfill prophetic descriptions and add strength to the cause. The unity of these diverse groups under the banner of truth reflects the universal appeal of the Mahdi's mission. As the battle reaches its climax, a turning point occurs. Despite severe losses, the army of the Mahdi does not break. In fact, their endurance reveals the hollowness of the opposing alliance. Disunity, fear, and internal corruption begin to plague the enemy camp, while the army of the Mahdi becomes increasingly disciplined and spiritually radiant. Divine signs begin to appear, demoralizing the enemy and inspiring the believers. The momentum shifts, and the tide of battle begins to favor the righteous. The victory of the Mahdi's army in Malhama al-Kubra is not merely a political triumph. It is the manifestation of divine justice on earth. The battlefield becomes a place of spiritual renewal, where those who fought and fell are honored not just as martyrs, but as fulfilled souls who attained the highest station. Their blood becomes the seed for the coming age of peace, and their memory fuels the continued mission of establishing truth and eradicating falsehood. In the aftermath, the battlefield is both a graveyard and a garden, a place of loss and rebirth. The fallen are buried with honor, and their stories are passed on as legends. The survivors are not triumphant in arrogance, but humbled by the magnitude of divine mercy. They understand that the battle they fought was never about power or conquest, but about proving their loyalty to the covenant of truth. It is this understanding that prepares them for the next phase in the divine plan, the confrontation with the Dajjal and the arrival of Isa ibn Maryam, who will join forces with the Mahdi to bring about the final cleansing of the world. Thus, the battlefield of Malhama al-Kubra is not merely a location on a map. It is a sacred stage where the forces of history, prophecy, and divine promise converge. It is where alliances are tested, where the faithful are distinguished from the pretenders, and where the unseen hand of divine justice becomes visible to all who dare to look beyond the material. It is the ground upon which the foundations of a new world will be laid, a world ruled not by tyranny or greed, but by the enduring light of divine truth. The spiritual dimensions of Malhama al-Kubra. Beyond the clash of armies and the geopolitical turmoil lies the deeper and more profound layer of Malhama al-Kubra, its spiritual dimension. While this great war is often discussed in terms of bloodshed, strategy, and prophecy, those with insight know that its core is not military might, but spiritual testing and divine purification. The battlefield is not only the land of Al-Sham, but also the hearts of believers. where the real war unfolds between ego and submission, fear and trust, hypocrisy and sincerity. This dimension of the Malhama gives it a timeless and universal relevance, making it not only a future event but a reflection of the eternal conflict between good and evil in every age. The essence of this final war is the trial of faith. In every narration concerning Malhama al-Kubra, there is an underlying theme of separation, a divine filtering of people, intentions, and allegiances. The purpose of this war is not conquest or revenge, but to expose the true nature of humanity in the face of fear and chaos. It is a test that reveals who stands for the truth even when surrounded by darkness, who holds firm to divine guidance when the world abandons it, and who is willing to give everything for a promise not yet seen, but deeply believed. The believers who participate in this war are not merely fighters, they are witnesses to a divine covenant. Their struggle is not for territory, but for the triumph of divine justice over corruption and oppression. The narrations from the Imams of the Ahl-e-Bait emphasize that the true preparation for Malhama al-Kubra is spiritual, not military. The companions of the awaited one are described as those who spend their nights in prayer, their days in fasting, and their hearts immersed in remembrance. They are individuals who have killed their inner tyrants before facing the external enemy. Their strength lies not in numbers, but in sincerity. Their weapons are not only swords, but tears, patience, and unwavering resolve. It is said that even the Mahdi recognizes his companions not through declarations of loyalty, but through the light of faith that radiates from their souls. They are the ones whose actions speak louder than their words and whose hearts beat in harmony with divine will. This inner purification is necessary because the Malhama is not just a battle of swords, but of narratives. In a time where truth is obscured and falsehood is adorned with gold, it becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish right from wrong. The battlefield of Malhama is clouded with confusion, where enemies disguise themselves as friends and hypocrites wear the garments of piety. It is in this environment that spiritual clarity becomes the greatest weapon. Those who have nurtured their insight will be able to see through deception and hold firm, while others will falter, confused by appearances and worldly pressures. Another essential aspect of the spiritual dimension is the role of divine support. The narrations mention that during the Malhama, unseen forces assist the army of truth. This includes not only the presence of angels, but also the unseen blessings that strengthen the hearts of the believers. These are not visible miracles in the conventional sense, but subtle signs, moments of divine mercy, spiritual visions, and inner tranquility amidst chaos. Such signs affirm the believer's path and remind them that they are not alone. Divine support is not granted to those who simply claim faith, but to those who have earned it through endurance and sincerity. The remembrance of Karbala plays a profound role in shaping the spiritual consciousness of those who fight in Malhama al-Kubra. The Imams have taught that every struggle for truth echoes the stand of Imam Hussain. His sacrifice is not a relic of the past, but a living model for all those who seek to uphold divine justice. The companions of the Mahdi are often described as possessing the same spirit as the companions of Hussain. They understand that victory is not defined by survival, but by loyalty to the cause. They walk into battle not with the desire for glory, but with the willingness to give their lives for a higher truth. This readiness to sacrifice is what gives the Malhama its sanctity and elevates it above all other wars. In many traditions, the qualities of the true believers are outlined in detail. They are described as having hearts stronger than iron, eyes that weep from the fear of God, and voices that echo the call to truth. Their unity is not based on shared nationality or culture, but on shared purpose and spiritual purity. They are bonded by love for the divine and commitment to the covenant. In their presence there is peace, in their speech there is wisdom, and in their actions there is reflection of divine mercy. This unity, born of sincere hearts and free of personal ambition, becomes the bedrock of their victory. On the other hand, the spiritual state of the enemy is equally revealing. Though powerful and organized, their hearts are hollow. They are driven by greed, fear, arrogance, and the desire to dominate. Their alliances are fragile, built on mutual interests rather than truth. In contrast to the spiritual nobility of the Mahdi's followers, the opposition is marked by inner decay. Their unity collapses under pressure, and their strength fades in the face of spiritual resilience. This contrast highlights that the Malhama is not merely about external power, but about the internal state of the soul. Victory belongs to those whose hearts are illuminated, not to those who hold worldly dominance. One of the most profound aspects of the Malhama is the transformation it brings to those who experience it. Many of the companions of the Mahdi are not born saints. They are individuals who undergo intense personal struggles, who fall and rise, doubt and believe, until they reach a point of inner awakening. Their journey mirrors the journey of humanity from heedlessness to consciousness. The Malhama becomes a crucible in which souls are refined, hypocrisy is burned away, and truth is established in its purest form. This process of transformation is what gives the event its timeless significance. Furthermore, the concept of martyrdom in Malhama al-Kubra takes on a deeply spiritual meaning. To die in this battle is not seen as loss, but as elevation. The martyrs are described as being alive with their Lord, honored in ways that defy worldly comprehension. Their blood is not spilled in vain. It waters the roots of a new era built on justice and divine order. They are the foundation upon which the future will stand, their sacrifices echoing through generations as symbols of ultimate loyalty and love for the truth. Even those who survive the battle are forever changed. They carry within them the scars of sacrifice and the light of clarity. They become leaders not through force, but through example, guiding others with humility and insight. They become living proofs of divine promise, walking testaments to the victory of patience and truth over oppression and deceit. Their presence is a reminder that the Malhama was not the end, but the beginning of a new dawn. In the teachings of the Ahl-e-Bait, it is repeatedly emphasized that the believers must prepare for this battle long before it begins. This preparation is not in storing weapons or building armies, but in refining the self, cultivating knowledge, and developing unwavering trust in the divine. Those who engage in self-discipline, who serve the oppressed, who speak truth in the face of falsehood, they are already soldiers in the army of the Mahdi, regardless of their physical location. Their sincerity writes their name among the chosen, and their prayers draw them closer to the day when truth will rise unchallenged. The night prayers, the Quranic recitation, the remembrance of the oppressed, the refusal to compromise with falsehood, all these are spiritual exercises that prepare the soul for Malhama. It is not an event that one can join on a whim. It is a divine appointment that one must be ready for through years of inner work, moral discipline, and unwavering loyalty to the divine path. Those who will stand in the Malhama are already standing today, quietly resisting, silently weeping, and patiently hoping. Ultimately, the spiritual dimensions of Malhama al-Kubra reveal that this is not merely a story of battle, but a story of return. Humanity's return to its original promise, its covenant with the Creator. It is the moment when masks fall, illusions fade, and the soul stands face to face with its destiny. In that moment, the only thing that matters is the truth one lived by, the light one carried within, and the loyalty one showed to the divine. Trust, and in that truth, the victory is already written. Aftermath. Dajjal, the return of Isa and global change. As the dust of Malhama al-Kubra settles and the battlefield becomes quiet after days of unimaginable conflict, the world stands at a turning point unlike any it has seen before. The war may have ended in the material sense, but its impact reverberates far beyond the physical realm. This war is the divine purifier that clears the path for the most critical events in eschatology, the emergence of the Dajjal and the descent of Isa ibn Maryam. These events unfold in close succession and mark a shift from the era of concealment, hypocrisy, and injustice to a new age of clarity, divine rule, and ultimate truth. The aftermath of Malhama al-Kubra is not a period of recovery alone. It is the opening of the final chapter of the world as we know it. Among the many signs that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the Imams of the Ahl-e-Bait have spoken of, the appearance of the Dajjal occupies a central place. The Dajjal, known as the Antichrist in other traditions, is not merely an individual, but a system, an ideology, and a personality that embodies deception, material power, and the perversion of truth. He appears in the wake of Malhama al-Kubra, at a time when the world is vulnerable and exhausted. People seek peace and answers, but the Dajjal offers false solutions that enslave rather than liberate. His rise is swift and terrifying. He commands advanced technology, illusions, and a narrative so convincing that many are swept away, unable to distinguish between reality and illusion. The narrations describe the Dajjal as having powers that seem supernatural, the ability to control weather, to raise the dead in appearance, to traverse the earth rapidly, and to manipulate resources. He claims divinity and demands worship. Those who are spiritually blind or materially greedy fall into his trap. Yet for those who have been refined by the trials of Malhama, his deception is transparent. They see through his lies, recognizing in him the culmination of centuries of falsehood wrapped in modern garb. The Dajjal does not win by force, he wins by corrupting the soul. And it is precisely the soul that the Mahdi and his followers have already fortified. It is during this period of intense confusion and global deception that divine intervention reaches its next stage. Isa ibn Maryam, the blessed prophet who was neither killed nor crucified but raised by Allah, descends once more to the earth. His return is not as a new prophet, for the final prophethood belongs solely to Muhammad, but as a just leader who aligns fully with the mission of the Mahdi. Isa returns to reaffirm the truth, to expose the lies of the Dajjal, and to stand shoulder to shoulder with the army of the righteous in the final confrontation. The descent of Isa, peace be upon him, is a moment of global recognition. According to hadiths, he descends near a white minaret in Damascus, clad in garments of light and humility. The Mahdi offers him leadership in prayer, but Isa insists on following the Mahdi, establishing a powerful symbol of continuity between divine missions. This moment is not just symbolic, but doctrinal. It affirms the completion of prophethood in Muhammad and the legitimacy of the Mahdi's divine leadership. Together, they lead the believers into the final stand against the greatest trial humanity will ever face. The defeat of the Dajjal is not merely a military action. According to narrations, Isa will confront him at the Gate of Lud, near present-day Lod in Palestine, where he will destroy him with a single blow. But this act is symbolic of a larger spiritual reality, the end of deception and the collapse of the global order built on lies. With the fall of Dajjal, the veil that has obscured truth for generations is lifted. The world enters a new era not built on capitalism, imperialism, or modern ideologies, but on divine justice, humility, and truth. What follows is a transformation of global proportions. The tyrants who thrived under the Dajjal system lose their grip. Oppressive regimes crumble. The economic systems that fed on exploitation are replaced by equitable and just practices. Technology is no longer a tool of distraction and manipulation, but redirected toward benefit and balance. The world begins to heal, not only politically and socially, but spiritually. Mosques are filled, not as monuments, but as centers of learning and service. The Quran is no longer recited as ritual, but lived as a constitution. In this era of divine governance, Isa rules with mercy and firmness. He breaks the cross, kills the swine, and removes the jizya. A clear message that the era of distortion is over. Religions based on truth are unified, and the divisions sown by centuries of manipulation are mended. There is no compulsion, no forced conversion, but truth becomes so clear that resistance fades naturally. The people who once lived in confusion and ideological warfare now find clarity and peace under the banner of unity, led by Isa and supported by the Mahdi. This period is also marked by a revival of human dignity. The value of a person is no longer determined by race, wealth, or nationality, but by their piety, character, and service to others. The family unit is restored as a place of spiritual nurturing. Knowledge is widespread, and ignorance is treated as a disease to be healed, not a weapon to be exploited. The natural environment, once ravaged by greed, begins to regenerate. Animals roam freely, agriculture thrives, and the land produces in abundance. All of this is not because of technological advancement, but because of spiritual realignment. Justice during this time is not only judicial but existential. Every soul feels seen, heard, and valued. The Mahdi and Isa do not merely govern, they shepherd hearts. Disputes are resolved not through courts but through mutual understanding and deep moral awareness. This is the era of truth manifest, where children grow up without fear and the elderly are honored, not discarded. It is the world as it was always meant to be, but even this golden age is not eternal. According to narrations, Isa will live for several years, during which peace will prevail. Eventually, he will pass away, and his death will mark the closing of the final divine chapter on earth. The Mahdi, too, having fulfilled his mission, will depart. What follows is a brief period of spiritual decline, as the forces of forgetfulness and arrogance attempt to rise once again. But the foundation laid during this era will not be easily erased. The aftermath of Malhama al-Kubra, therefore, is not a conclusion, but a resurrection. It is the reawakening of humanity to its divine purpose. It is the proof that truth, though challenged, never dies. It is the fulfillment of promises made across centuries to the oppressed, the forgotten, and the sincere. This new world order, established through blood, patience, and divine guidance, becomes the final model before the day of judgment arrives. In this age of justice, there is still one great event left: the blowing of the trumpet, the resurrection of all souls, and the gathering before the Lord of the worlds. But before that final moment, the world will have seen what it means to live under divine justice, to witness the defeat of all forms of falsehood, and to breathe in a world where truth governs. The aftermath of Malhama al-Kubra is the most transformative period in human history. It is the bridge between the world of deception and the world of truth. Through the appearance of the Dajjal and his defeat at the hands of Isa ibn Maryam, the world is cleansed of its greatest fitna. With the Mahdi's leadership and the unifying presence of Isa, A new global reality emerges, one founded on divine justice, mercy, and wisdom. This is the culmination of centuries of struggle, the reward of the oppressed, and the realization of divine promises. It is a glimpse of the world, as it was meant to be before the final trumpet calls all of creation to its ultimate reckoning.